everyone, I'm doing Kari Mecca's Sarah's Pinafore and Panties. No, that's not Sarah like for me, we don't even know each other. I'm just going to show how to do the pinafore today. I will link down below where you can buy the pattern. Once you get your pattern, you need to iron it and trace it. I will also link some tracing paper. Tracing isn't, the most fun thing in the world, but you just sort of trace and get through it. You only have to trace 3 pattern pieces here if you have terrible fabric, which I will get into in a second. So I'm going through my bin of scraps. I'm making the 6-month size. It's itty bitty tiny, so this is a great project to get rid of some of those scraps. I will link below where I've bought all of these. These are all from Farmhouse Fabrics. It's like my favorite place to buy fabric. They just have some great quality fabric, very reasonable prices for the quality of fabric that you're getting, and the customer service that is offered is just phenomenal. So make sure your fabric is on the correct grain that the pattern calls for and cut out your pieces. So if your fabric is like mine and it's rippable, you can just measure the correct length for your skirt since it's a rectangle, snip it where the length needs to be for the size that you're making, and rip away. Once you're done ripping, you can then cut it to length. Alright, then take your overlay and turn up the bottom edge about 1/4 of an inch, and take that overlay with both of the right sides facing up. I'm doing this with one hand, mind you, because I'm holding the camera with the other hand. So, anyway, put your overlay on top of your bodice, the front bodice, and you're just going to base this in place. Now you're going to take, with right sides together, take the back pieces and sew them at the shoulder seams. Do this for the lining as well as the front of the bodice. Once you're done with that, place your ribbons in the correct spots, pin them down, put the right sides together from your lining and your bodice, and stitch the sides as well as the back through the neckline through the other back. When you're done with that, you're going to clip the neckline around the curve, and then you're going to turn it right sides out like I'm doing here. Just be a little bit patient, do it a little bit at a time, and it will eventually come out. Come right sides out. Yeah. Now once you have it turned right sides out, go back to your ironing board and iron that so everything's laying flat and looking nice. And sew and you iron just as much as you sew, if not more. Alright, and I started to work on the skirt, and I don't know, I just didn't have enough coffee or what I was thinking, but I didn't put it together correct, so I'm using my seam ripper, and I'm only putting this in here to encourage y'all that are learning to sew that just because you use your seam ripper does not mean you should stop sewing. I feel like I'm quite accomplished, and I still use that seam ripper all the time, so don't feel bad if you have to use yours. Alright, so to put the skirt together correctly, just put right sides together for the front of the skirt and sew down each of the sides. Once you're done doing that, iron the skirt so it's laying flat, and repeat the same process to the back skirt. This means that both of the skirts are going to have 2 pieces of fabric together. That's how you're going to finish the side seams. Do the same process for the hem band. You're just going to sew those little sides together. Now what you're going to do is take your hem band and with right sides together, sew that band onto the skirt. However, don't sew the top portion of that band. See how I'm leaving that top portion free? You're going to want that later because you're going to flip it to the other side as I'm doing right now, iron it down, and then that side that's free, what you're going to do is use that to enclose the raw edges. So I'm folding that free side down. I'm going to tuck those raw edges underneath and then iron on top of that. That way all of the raw edges from your skirt as well as from that band are all hidden. And you might feel tempted to take this to the machine and sew over that. Don't do it. Resist the urge. I like to pin it so I can do the hand work later, but it should be done by hand. I will judge you. No. Yes. No. Yes, I will. Any rate, so now you're going to work on your skirt. I like to do 2 rows of gathers, so I move my needle all the way to the right, or more to the right, and then make your length as long as it can. Again, I'm doing this with one hand, but you're just going to run a row of gather stitches, and I like to do 2 rows, so move your needle back to the left and do another row. Basically the method I like is to do 2 rows and then put your stitches that are going to stay, they're actually going to attach the skirt in between those 2. That helps to keep the gathers facing the right direction. So gather your skirt up, pin it in place, make sure the length is the same as the length on the front of the skirt. With right sides together, you're going to stitch the front of that skirt to the front of the bodice. Now, don't get the bodice lining caught in those stitches. Similar to how we did the lining on the band, you're going to do the same thing for the lining on the bodice. I'm hoping this is making sense. If it's not, put it down in the comments below. So you can just pull that gather thread out as I'm showing there. So here's what I'm talking about. You're going to take that lining, fold the edges up, and you're going to iron that in place. This is going to enclose all of those raw edges from the lining, as well as the skirt, as well as the front of the bodice. It's going to be all a nice little neat package, and you won't see any of them. So now you're going to work on the back of the skirt. And for the back of the skirt, we're going to have to put in a placket. The placket goes in the center of the skirt, so how I find center is I just fold my skirt in half and iron. And I know where the crease is roughly center. Then you're going to need to take a little piece of fabric to make the placket out of. I generally just cut, I usually make mine about 2 inches wide, rip it down the middle, iron that so it's flat, and then I iron mine in half. So I'm just using this as a guide so I know how long it is, and I just guessed on how long to make this. I've been making clothes for a while, and honestly I'm just too stubborn to, well, back in the day I was too stubborn to open up the directions on any pattern, and I've just gotten into that habit. So I might be making this by the directions that Kari Mecca gives, and I might not. I have no idea. Any rate, so I like to have my skirt on the top and the placket strip on the bottom, and then of course right sides together. As you're sewing the placket strip onto the skirt, you're going to have to go off on an angle. And when you get down to the bottom of the placket, it's going to start to bunch a little bit. Just put your needle down, move the fabric out, those bunches out of the way, and go again. If it starts to bunch up again, you just repeat that same process, and eventually you're going to get it out of the bottom corner. If you're new to plackets, it's always a good rule of thumb to check at the bottom of your placket to make sure you didn't catch any of the fabric. I didn't catch any, those are just wrinkles. At any rate, once you're sure that you don't have any bunches, then snip the bottom of the placket to release the tension there. You're also going to want to trim the placket strip itself if you have any excess. At this point, you're basically wanting a 1/2 inch, because you're going to turn it over 1/4 inch iron, and then turn it over another 1/4 inch and iron that. And at that point, you should be right at where those stitch lines are. Now at the bottom of the placket, you're going to want to pinch it together to where the center of the skirt is, and insert a couple stitches here. This will make the placket lie flat. I'm only entering maybe 3 stitches. I'm just going back and forth a few times. After some ironing, this is what your placket should look like. Again, I just pinned my handwork for later. So you're going to repeat the gathers to the back of the skirt using that 2-row gather system. Adjust the rows so it matches the back of the bodice. And you're going to sew the back of the bodice onto the back of the skirt the same way you did the front. Make sure not to get that lining stuck in there. Just be patient and go slow. Pull that gather thread out, and you should look like that. Repeat for it to the other side. Once you're done with that, you can iron both sides, And now you're ready for your handwork. I do handwork with finer thread, so it's like 80 weight. And I do all of my handwork, at least I try to do all of my handwork in the stitches when it's all possible. So I'm not actually going through, for that blue fabric, I'm not actually going through any of the fabric. I'm just going through the stitches there. And I'll go over 3 or 4 stitches, and that's where I put another whip stitch in. And I do the same thing to the placket. Now that this front overlay part is a little bit different, you're going to take your needle through the fold of the fabric so the thread is hidden on the other side of that fold. Then take it through a few of the stitches, or a few of the threads rather, of that top bodice. Don't go through the lining because then you'll see it from the back. And again, I'm going through that fold so the thread is hidden on the other side of that fold. I hope I'm making sense. Alright, and to finish the back, I just did snaps this time. I just wasn't feeling hand-done buttonholes. I will link my snap video in here if you would like to see that. And then it's all done. I didn't actually do the little panties or bloomers. Panties is a weird word. I didn't actually do the bloomers, but that's the pinafore right there. Hope you enjoy.